No one would ever choose you. The words echoed through her skull like a death sentence. I have watched you longer than you know. Of all the cruelties she had endured, this night would carve the deepest scar. Tell me honestly, brother, if I release her from my claim right now, would you step forward? Or are you simply wounded that I took what you discarded? She had never shifted. Not once in 23 years. The prince abandoned her before the entire kingdom. What she never expected was that the Alpha King, his own brother, would walk past every noble woman in that hall and stop directly before her. The crack of wooden swords split the frozen morning air as Seren pivoted, narrowly avoiding a strike that would have shattered her collarbone. Her opponent, a broad-shouldered guard named Falk, grunted in surprise when her counterattack slammed the flat of her blade against his ribs. He staggered. She pressed forward. 3 more strikes and he was on his knees in the frost-covered dirt, wheezing for breath. Yield, Seren said, her voice calm despite the fire burning in her lungs. Falk spat into the mud. You fight like something's chasing you. She did not respond. She simply stepped back and raised her blade again, waiting for the next challenger. But no one moved. The training yard had fallen silent, and Seren felt the familiar prickle of hostile attention crawling across her skin. The cursed one draws blood again. A honeyed voice drifted from the stone archway. Someone should remind her that skill with a blade cannot scrub the stain from her soul. Lady Lysara descended the steps with the practiced elegance of a viper, her silver hair catching the weak winter sun. Behind her trailed a cluster of noble daughters, their laughter sharp as broken glass. 23 years, Seren. Lysara stopped at the edge of the training circle, her ice-blue eyes gleaming with familiar cruelty. 23 years since you crawled into this world beneath a blood moon, and still your wolf sleeps. Perhaps it was never there at all. Perhaps you are simply hollow. She laughed, a sound like cracking ice. No one would ever choose you. You know that, don't you? The words landed like a blade between Serene's ribs. Hollow. It was what they had called her since childhood. Born under the crimson moon, a sign of calamity, her wolf had never stirred. Not a whisper. Not a flicker. While other children shifted for the first time at 12 or 13, Seren remained trapped in her human skin, an aberration in a kingdom of wolves. My wolf does not determine my worth, Seren said, sheathing her sword with deliberate slowness, as the guard bleeding at my feet can confirm. Lysara's smile flickered, a crack in the porcelain mask, before settling back into place. A sword cannot warm your bed, dear. And it certainly will not make Prince Theron see you as anything more than a passing amusement. The blow struck exactly where it was intended. Seren felt the impact somewhere beneath her ribs, in that guarded place she had fortified with years of silence and swallowed tears. Excuse me. She turned her back on Lysara before her expression could betray her. Some of us earn our place here with effort, not bloodlines. She walked away without waiting for a response, her boots crunching against the frozen ground, her heart pounding a rhythm of rage and shame. The castle corridors swallowed her whole. Cold stone walls, ancient tapestries depicting wolves mid-hunt, torches that flickered with shadows that seemed to watch her pass. And somewhere above, from the highest tower of the eastern wing, someone was watching. Seren felt it before she saw it. A presence pressing against her spine, a gravity that made the hair on her arms rise. She glanced upward toward the dark silhouette framed against the pale morning sky. King Kalen. Why is he always watching? Seren pushed the thought away. She had no time for riddles, not when her own heart was a battlefield she could barely survive. She remembered the first time she saw Prince Theron. She had been 11 years old, freshly orphaned, dragged to the castle by soldiers who called her cursed under their breath. Her parents had died defending the northern border, heroes who left behind a daughter no one wanted to claim. That day, Seren had been scrubbing floors in the servants' wing when Theron walked past. He was 12, golden-haired, with a smile that made the kitchen maids blush and stammer. He had stopped, looked down at her mud-streaked face, and laughed. "You missed a spot," he had said, pointing at a clean tile with mock seriousness. Then he had winked and tossed her an apple from his pocket. "Do not let them break you." It was nothing, a moment of idle kindness from a bored prince, but to Seren, starving for any scrap of warmth in that cold stone prison, it was everything. She clung to that apple core for weeks. She replayed his words every night before sleep. And when she grew older, when Theron began seeking her out between his courtly obligations, she let herself believe it meant something. He never promised anything. That was the elegant cruelty of it. He simply existed in her orbit, close enough to touch, but never quite within reach. A lingering glance across a crowded hall, his hand brushing hers when he passed her a book. Whispered conversations in the garden where he told her she was different from the others. Special. "You see me," he said once, his breath warm against her ear during a winter festival. "Not the crown. Just me." And Seren, foolish Seren, had believed him. She believed him when he disappeared for weeks with noble daughters and returned without explanation. She believed him when he danced with Lysara at the autumn ball, but found Seren afterward to tell her the dance meant nothing. She believed him because the alternative was admitting she had wasted 12 years loving a man who collected hearts like trophies. Crumbs. She had survived on crumbs, convincing herself they would someday become a feast. Now, walking through corridors that had witnessed every stage of her quiet heartbreak, Seren felt the familiar ache pulse beneath her ribs. The choosing ceremony was 3 weeks away, the ancient ritual where wolves claimed their mates beneath the full moon. Every unmated noble would be there, waiting to be chosen or to choose. Seren had never attended. What was the point? No one would claim a hollow girl. No one would bind themselves to a curse. But last night, Theron had found her in the library. His eyes were bright with wine and something else. Something that made her foolish heart stutter. 3 weeks, he had whispered, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Everything changes in 3 weeks. He had left before she could ask what he meant. But hope, that relentless creature she could never quite kill, had awakened in her chest. What if he finally chooses me? The king's study overlooked the entire Western Valley, but Kaelin was not watching the landscape. He stood motionless at the window, arms folded behind his back, his gaze fixed on the training yard below, where a dark-haired figure had just disarmed the captain of his guard. Seren. He had watched her for years. At first, it was duty. Her parents had died saving his father's life during the northern siege. When the old king brought their orphaned daughter to the castle, he had made Kaelin swear to protect her, to ensure she was never abandoned. Kaelin had been 19 then, already carrying a crown too heavy for such young shoulders. He had kept his promise. From the shadows. Always the shadows. He watched her train until her hands bled. He watched her endure humiliations that would have broken warriors twice her age. He watched her rise, again and again, when anyone else would have surrendered to despair. Somewhere along the way, duty had become something else, something he refused to name. The door behind him opened without a knock. Only one person in the kingdom had that privilege. "You are brooding again, brother." Theron strolled into the study, plucking a grape from the silver bowl on Kaelin's desk. "It is unbecoming for a king." "And you are hungover again." Kaelin did not turn from the window. "It is unbecoming for a prince." Theron laughed, dropping into a chair with the lazy grace of someone who had never carried real responsibility. "The choosing ceremony is approaching. I am merely preparing myself for the occasion." "By drinking yourself unconscious every night?" "By celebrating." Theron's voice shifted, something sly creeping into its edges. "I have made my decision, you know, about who I will claim." Kaelin's jaw tightened. He already knew. He had seen the way Theron circled Seren, the way he kept her hoping with carefully measured attention. And he had seen the pattern before, with other women Theron had grown bored of once the chase ended. "Have you?" Kaelin said flatly. You disapprove? The king finally turned, his gray eyes unreadable. I think you do not know your own mind. Theron's smile faltered for just a moment. We shall see, brother. We shall see. He left the way he came, careless and confident. And Kalen returned his gaze to the window, to the girl still training in the yard below. You deserve someone who is certain of you. But it was not his place to say. The great hall of Valdros had never looked more magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, their light fracturing into 1,000 rainbows that danced across marble floors. Silver banners bearing the royal crest rippled in the warmth, rising from braziers positioned along the walls. Musicians played from the upper gallery, their melodies weaving through the hum of conversation and clinking glasses. The moon fireball was the traditional prelude to the choosing ceremony, a celebration where unmated wolves displayed themselves like jewels waiting to be claimed. Every noble family in the kingdom had sent their daughters, draped in silks and glittering with ambition. Seren felt like a crow among peacocks. Her dress was borrowed, a deep midnight blue that Mira, one of the kitchen servants who had always been kind to her, had altered from a cast-off. It was simple compared to the elaborate gowns surrounding her, but it fit well. And when Seren had looked in the mirror earlier, she had almost not recognized herself. You look like you are waiting for execution. A dry voice cut through her thoughts. Seren turned to find a young woman standing beside her, unremarkable in appearance, but with eyes that missed nothing. She held 2 glasses of wine and offered one to Seren without asking if she wanted it. Orena, the woman introduced herself. Distant cousin to someone important enough that I received an invitation, insignificant enough that no one remembers my name. I find it gives me excellent opportunities to observe. And what have you observed? Seren asked, accepting the glass but not drinking. That you have been staring at Prince Theron for the past 20 minutes. Orena tilted her head, studying Seren with unsettling directness. And that he has been staring at you. Serene's heart stumbled. She looked across the hall to where Theron stood among a cluster of nobles, his golden hair catching the chandelier light, his smile easy and practiced. But even as a young duchess leaned close to whisper something in his ear, his gaze drifted past her. To Seren. Their eyes met across the crowded room and Theron smiled. Not his public smile, the one he wore like armor. A different smile. Softer. Just for her. Before Seren could react, Theron was moving through the crowd, leaving confused nobles in his wake. He stopped before her, and the nearby conversations died as people turned to watch. Dance with me, he said, extending his hand. Seren felt every stare in the hall pressing against her skin. She saw Lysara's face twist with poorly concealed fury. She heard the whispers beginning, poison wrapped in curiosity. She took his hand anyway. The crowd parted as Theron led her to the center of the floor. The musicians shifted to a slower melody, and then she was in his arms, moving through steps she had practiced alone in her chambers for years, dreaming of exactly this moment. They are all watching, she whispered. Let them. Theron pulled her closer, his hand warm against the small of her back. I want them to see. Why? He leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. Because in 2 weeks, I am going to claim you in front of all of them. The world stopped. Seren's feet continued moving, her body following the rhythm of the dance. But her mind had frozen completely. She pulled back to look at his face, searching for the joke, the cruelty, the inevitable retraction. She found only certainty. You cannot be serious, she breathed. I have never been more serious. Theron's hand tightened on hers. I know I have made you wait. I know I have not always been what you deserved, but I am ready now, Seren. I choose you. Tears burned behind her eyes. 12 years of longing, of hoping, of convincing herself she was foolish to dream. And now, finally. I will announce it formally next week, Theron continued. But I wanted you to know first. I wanted tonight to be ours. The music swelled. Seren let herself be swept along, let herself believe. Let the joy she had denied herself for so long finally crack through her defenses. She did not notice King Kalen watching from the shadows near the throne. She did not see the expression on his face, something between resignation and quiet devastation. And she did not see the ornate carriage pulling through the castle gates at that very moment, bearing a passenger whose arrival would change everything. Lady Ravenna Ashford arrived at Valdros like a storm wrapped in silk. Seren first saw her the morning after the ball, crossing the courtyard in a traveling cloak of deep crimson that made her look like a wound against the gray stone. Her hair was black as a raven's wing, her features sharp and striking, her every movement calculated for maximum impact. "Who is that?" Seren asked Mira, who had come to deliver breakfast to her small chamber. Mira's round face tightened. "Lady Ravenna, daughter of Duke Ashford from the eastern provinces." She lowered her voice. "They say she has left 3 broken engagements in her wake. Lords, all of them, who were besotted 1 month and ruined the next. Why would she come here?" "The choosing ceremony." Mira set down the tray, her eyes troubled. "They say she came for the king." Seren felt something cold slither through her stomach, though she could not explain why. The king was not her concern. Theron was her future now. But as the days passed, Ravenna's target became increasingly unclear. She appeared everywhere. In the gardens when Seren walked to training. In the corridors when Seren returned to her chamber. At meals, where she somehow always secured a seat near the royal family. Her laugh rang through the halls, musical and practiced, and her eyes, pale green like sea glass, tracked everything with predatory patience. And she had noticed Theron. Serene watched from her place at the lower tables as Ravenna leaned close to whisper something that made the prince throw his head back in laughter. She watched Ravenna's delicate fingers rest on Theron's arm, watched him lean into the touch instead of pulling away. "She is very good." Orenna materialized beside her, as she always seemed to do. Notice how she never approaches him directly. She lets him come to her, then makes him feel like he is the one pursuing. "He promised me," Seren said, hating how small her voice sounded. "Men promise many things." Orenna's tone held no cruelty, only weary truth. "It is what they do when tested that matters." That night, Seren found herself walking past the royal gardens. She told herself it was coincidence. She told herself she was not looking for Theron. Then she heard his voice. "Cannot simply ignore her," Theron was saying, his tone strained. "She is the daughter of Duke Ashford. The alliance alone." "The alliance is irrelevant." King Kalen's voice cut through the darkness, cold and sharp. "You made a promise. I made a suggestion. Nothing has been formally announced." Silence. Heavy, damning silence. "She has waited 12 years for you." Kalen's voice dropped lower, but Seren caught every word. 12 years of loyalty while you entertained yourself with others. And now, a week before you are meant to claim her, you are already calculating escape routes. "I am not." "Do not lie to me, Theron. I know you better than you know yourself." Footsteps approached. Seren stumbled back from the door just as they faded into another direction, and she was left alone with the ruins of everything she had believed. Seren did not sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word until they lost all meaning. By dawn, her eyes were dry and burning, but she forced herself to rise, to dress, to walk to the training yard as she always did. Routine was armor. Discipline was survival. She was halfway through her morning drills when she felt him approach. "You are dropping your shoulder on the backswing." Seren spun, sword raised, and found King Kalen standing at the edge of the yard. He was dressed simply, dark leather and practical boots, his gray eyes watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Your Majesty?" She lowered her blade, dipping into a hasty bow. "I did not hear you approach." "You were distracted." He stepped into the training circle, his movements fluid despite his size. "Your form suffers when your mind is elsewhere." Saren tightened her grip on the sword. I am fine. You are lying. No accusation in his voice, only quiet certainty. You heard our conversation in the garden last night. The blood drained from her face. I did not mean to. I know. Kaelin stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could smell pine and leather and something darker beneath, like a storm gathering on the horizon. I also know my brother has given you reason to doubt. He explained nothing. The words escaped before she could stop them, raw with the hurt she had been swallowing all night. No, he would not. Kaelin's jaw tightened. Theron has never been good at facing consequences. He makes promises in the heat of a moment and retreats when reality arrives. Why are you telling me this? For a long moment the king did not answer. His eyes searched her face as though looking for something he was afraid to find. Because you deserve honesty, he finally said. Because you have spent years being fed half-truths and empty gestures, and I cannot stand to watch it continue. Seren felt her chest constrict. He said he would claim me. He said many things. Kaelin's voice softened, and somehow that was worse than coldness. The question is whether he will stand by them when it matters. You think he will not? The silence was answer enough. Seren looked away, blinking against the heat building behind her eyes. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of him. You are stronger than you know. Kaelin's voice was barely above a whisper now. Whatever happens, remember that. You have survived every cruelty this castle has offered. You will survive this too. He turned to leave, then paused. Seren. Her name in his mouth sounded different than she had ever heard it. Heavier. More careful. You deserve someone who is certain of you. Not someone who wavers when a shinier option appears. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the frozen training yard with his words echoing in her skull. Someone who is certain. She thought of Theron's easy promises and Kaelin's steady presence. And for the first time she was not sure which one she should believe. The night of the choosing ceremony arrived beneath a moon so full it turned the world to silver. The great hall had been transformed. The chandeliers were dimmed, replaced by hundreds of floating candles that cast dancing shadows across ancient stone. The sacred circle was drawn at the center of the floor in powdered moonstone, its runes pulsing with an otherworldly light that made Seren's skin hum. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart hammering against her ribs. The dress she wore was white, trimmed with silver, borrowed again from Mira, who had stayed up 3 nights altering it. Her dark hair was braided and pinned with small crystals that caught the candlelight. She looked, for perhaps the first time in her life, like she belonged among the nobility. But inside, she was fracturing. Theron had not spoken to her in 4 days. He had not sought her out, not sent word, and not even met her eyes across the dining hall. Every time she glimpsed him, Ravenna was nearby, her pale green gaze flickering to Seren with quiet triumph. He will come. Seren whispered the words like a prayer. He promised. The ceremony began. One by one, the eligible wolves were called to the center of the circle to make their claims. Serene watched couples form, some expected, others surprising, each union sealed with clasped hands and formal declarations. The crowd applauded politely, their smiles calculated, the entire ritual a political dance disguised as romance. Then the herald's voice rang out. Prince Theron Valdros, second heir to the throne, step forward to make your claim. Seren's breath stopped. Theron walked to the center of the circle, his golden hair gleaming, his posture perfect. He looked like a painting come to life, every inch the prince she had loved since childhood. She stepped forward. It was what they had discussed, what he had promised. She felt the crowd's attention shift to her, heard the whispers begin, saw Lysara's face twist with anticipation of her humiliation, but Saren kept walking. 12 years. She had waited 12 years for this moment. Theron saw her approaching. Their eyes met across the sacred circle, and he looked away. This cycle, Theron's voice rang clear through the silent hall. I claim no one. The words struck her like a physical blow. Seren stopped. Her feet simply ceased to move, rooted to the moonstone floor as though the runes themselves had trapped her. The silence that followed was absolute, a void where her heartbeat should have been. Perhaps at the next ceremony, Theron added, still not looking at her. When I have had more time to consider. More time. The whispers started. Then the murmurs. Then the poorly concealed laughter from those who had always known this would happen, who had been waiting for the hollow girl to finally be exposed. Seren could not move, could not breathe, could not do anything but stand there, frozen in the center of 100 staring eyes, more naked than she had ever been in her entire life. She saw Ravenna's smile, sharp and satisfied. She saw Lysara's hand pressed to her mouth in mock sympathy. She saw Arena's face, pale with genuine pity. And she saw King Kaelin. He sat on the throne at the back of the hall, motionless as carved stone. But his eyes were fixed on her, and in them she saw something that cut through her humiliation like a blade. Fury. Absolute, barely contained fury. Seren tried to step back, tried to find the strength to turn and flee, to escape before the last fragments of her dignity crumbled completely. Then Kaelin moved. The king rose from his throne, and the hall fell instantly silent. He descended the dais steps with slow, deliberate strides, each footfall echoing against the stone like a drumbeat. His face was carved granite, but his eyes burned with something that made the nearest nobles shrink away. He walked past the elders, past the counselors, past his own brother who had gone pale as fresh snow, and he stopped directly before Seren. The entire kingdom held its breath. Kaelin's gray eyes held hers, and in that moment, Seren forgot about the crowd, about Theron, about every humiliation she had ever endured. There was only him. Only the impossible intensity of his gaze. Only the question written in every line of his face. "My brother," Kaelin said, his voice carrying through the hall without effort, "has proven himself unworthy of the claim he promised." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Theron made a strangled sound of protest, but Kaelin did not acknowledge him. But a promise was made to this woman. The king's voice hardened to steel. A promise that she would not be abandoned, that she would be protected. That debt falls to me now. He extended his hand, palm upward, fingers open. An offering, not a demand, a Seren. Her name in his mouth was a vow. I claim you, not out of pity, not out of duty, but because you have earned more respect than anyone in this hall, and I will not allow you to stand here in shame for one moment longer. The silence shattered into chaos. Elders surged to their feet, robes billowing with outrage, nobles erupted into frantic whispers. Somewhere, a woman screamed, whether in shock or fury, Seren could not tell. But she heard none of it. She stared at Kaelin's outstretched hand, her mind reeling, her heart pounding a rhythm she did not recognize. This was impossible. The king, claiming her? The hollow girl, the cursed one, the aberration who had never shifted? Why? The word escaped as barely a whisper. Because you deserve someone who is certain. Kaelin's voice dropped low, meant only for her. And I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Seren looked at his hand. She looked at his face, searching for deception, for mockery, for any sign that this was another cruelty waiting to unfold. She found only truth. Her hand rose before her mind could stop it. Her fingers touched his palm, and the moment their skin connected, something happened. A spark. Not metaphorical, but real. Heat surged through her chest, climbed her spine, made every nerve ending sing with a sensation she had never experienced. Deep inside her, in that hollow place she had carried her entire life, something stirred. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something that had been sleeping for 23 years. Serene gasped, her knees buckling. Kaelin caught her instantly, his arm wrapping around her waist, steadying her against his chest. "I have you," he murmured. "I have you." The hall had descended into pandemonium, but Kalen ignored it all. He turned to face the crowd, positioning himself between Seren and the sea of hostile faces. "The claim is made." His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Witnessed by the sacred circle, bound by ancestral law. Anyone who challenges it challenges me." No one spoke. Elder Mordecai, the oldest of the council, stepped forward with trembling fury. "Your Majesty, this is unprecedented. The girl has no wolf. She cannot. She is mine." Kalen's tone allowed no argument. "And I am the king. This discussion is over." He turned back to Seren, and his expression softened in a way she had never seen. "Come," he said quietly. "You do not need to remain here." Seren let him guide her toward the doors, past the gaping nobles, past the furious elders, past Ravenna frozen in disbelief, and past Theron, whose face held an expression she would remember for the rest of her life. Not anger, not jealousy, devastation. The chambers were larger than any space Seren had ever occupied. Velvet curtains framed windows that overlooked the moonlit gardens. A fire crackled in a marble hearth, casting warm light across silk-covered furniture and shelves lined with leather-bound books. Through an arched doorway, she glimpsed a bed large enough for 4 people, draped in fabrics that probably cost more than everything she had ever owned combined. "These are the consort's chambers," Kalen said, standing near the door as though afraid to venture further. "You will stay here." Seren turned in a slow circle, trying to process the enormity of what had happened. An hour ago, she had been a nobody, a hollow girl about to be publicly discarded. Now she stood in the Queen's chambers, claimed by the king himself. "I do not understand," she said, her voice cracking. "Why did you do this?" Kalen was silent for a long moment. The firelight carved shadows across his face, making him look older, wearier than his years. "Your parents saved my father's life," he finally said. "When they died, he made me swear to protect you, to ensure you were never abandoned." He paused, something flickering in his gray eyes. "But that is not the only reason." "Then what?" "I have watched you for 12 years, Seren." The words came slowly, as though each one cost him something. "I watched you fall and rise. I watched you endure cruelties that would have broken anyone else. I watched you become the strongest person in this castle while everyone around you saw only your weakness." He took a step toward her, then stopped, as though catching himself. "Tonight, when I saw you standing there, when I saw what my brother had done, something inside me refused to allow it. I could not let you be destroyed by his cowardice. Not when—" He stopped abruptly. "Not when what?" Seren pressed. Kalen's jaw tightened. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. The council will demand explanations, and there will be consequences to navigate." He turned toward the door, but Seren's voice stopped him. "You felt it too." It was not a question. "When our hands touched, you felt something." The king stood motionless, his back to her, his shoulders rigid with tension. "Yes," he said quietly. "I felt it." Then he was gone, leaving Seren alone with questions she did not know how to answer. Dawn had barely broken when the shouting began. Seren heard it through the walls of her new chambers, muffled but unmistakable. 2 voices, both male, both furious. She crept toward the door and pressed her ear to the wood, catching fragments that grew clearer as the argument intensified. "She had no right. You forfeited that right when you abandoned her. She was mine. She was never yours." Kalen's voice, cold as winter steel. "You kept her hoping for 12 years without ever intending to follow through. That is not love, Theron. That is cruelty." "And what you did was better?" Theron's voice cracked with rage. "Swooping in like some savior, claiming her in front of everyone? You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself." A pause, heavy with contempt. And you humiliated her. I simply refused to let it stand. You wanted her. Theron's accusation rang through the corridor. Admit it. You have wanted her for years, watching from your tower like some lovesick. Careful, brother. Kaelin's tone dropped to something dangerous. There are lines even you should not cross. Tell me honestly, then. Theron's voice turned bitter, mocking. If I release her from my claim right now, oh wait, I never made one. But if you release her from yours, would I step forward? Is that what you want to know? Or are you simply wounded that I saw through your noble act? Silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. The question, Kaelin said slowly, is whether you would claim her because you want her, or because your pride cannot stomach that I did. Tell me, Theron. If I withdraw my claim this very moment, would you step forward? Or is your pride simply bruised? No answer came. That is what I thought. Footsteps approached the door. She deserves someone certain. You have never been certain of anything in your life except your own reflection. The door handle turned. Seren stumbled backward just as it swung open. Theron stood in the doorway, his golden hair disheveled, his eyes wild with an emotion she could not name. Behind him, Kaelin watched with cold fury. Seren. Theron stepped toward her. Tell him this is not what you want. Tell him you were waiting for me. She stared at the man she had loved for 12 years. The prince who had fed her crumbs while feasting elsewhere. The coward who had left her standing alone in front of the entire kingdom. I was waiting for you, she said slowly. For 12 years I was waiting. And you left me there, Theron. You looked at me and walked away. I needed time. You needed an escape. Seren felt something shift inside her, some final chain breaking loose. And you found one? So do not stand here now pretending you wanted me. You never wanted me. You wanted me to want you. Theron's face crumpled. For a moment he looked like the boy who had tossed her an apple all those years ago, lost and uncertain. Then his expression hardened. You will regret this, he said. Both of you. He stormed past Kaelin, disappearing down the corridor. The king watched him go, then turned to Seren. Are you all right? She was trembling, she realized, her whole body shaking with the aftermath of finally saying what she had swallowed for over a decade. I think so, she whispered. I think I finally am. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Seren had ever experienced. She attended council meetings at Kaelin's side, silent but present, watching how he navigated the treacherous waters of politics with patience and precision. She took meals at the royal table, enduring the barely concealed hostility of nobles who resented her elevation. She trained in the yard each morning, her skills sharper than ever now that she had something besides heartbreak fueling her blade. And through it all, Kaelin was there, not hovering, not controlling, simply present. A steady warmth at the edge of her awareness, always close enough to reach if she needed him. He asked nothing of her, made no demands on her time or her body. When evening came, he walked her to her chambers, bid her good night at the door, and retreated to his own rooms with the discipline of a man who had learned to want without taking. It was driving Seren slowly insane. You are staring again, Orenna observed one afternoon. They sat in the library, books spread before them, though neither had turned a page in an hour. I am not staring. You are staring at the door he walked through 10 minutes ago. Orenna's lips twitched. You have been doing it constantly since the ceremony. Seren felt heat climb her cheeks. I do not know what I feel. Yes, you do. Orenna closed her book. You are simply afraid to admit it because your heart was broken so recently. But Seren, the way that man looks at you, how does he look at me? Like you are the answer to a question he has been asking his entire life. That night, Seren could not sleep. She paced her chambers until the candles burned low, then found herself walking the corridors, her feet carrying her without conscious direction. When she stopped, she stood before Kaelin's study. Light flickered beneath the door. She knocked before she could stop herself. Enter. Kalen sat at his desk, papers spread before him, dark circles beneath his gray eyes. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted, softened, before he could control it. Seren? Is something wrong? I cannot sleep. She closed the door behind her. I cannot stop thinking. About what? About you. The words escaped before she could catch them. About why you really claimed me. About what you are not saying. Kalen set down his quill slowly. He rose from his chair, moving around the desk until he stood before her. I have told you. You have told me about duty. About promises to your father. Seren stepped closer, close enough to catch his scent, pine and leather and that hint of storm she remembered from the training yard. But that is not why your hand trembles when you touch me. That is not why you look at me like... Like what? Like I am something precious. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Like you have been waiting for me. Kalen closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the careful control he always wore had cracked, revealing something raw beneath. Because I have been, he said. Gods help me, Seren. I have been waiting for you since the day you arrived at this castle, covered in mud, with more fire in your eyes than any warrior I had ever seen. She kissed him. It was not gentle. It was not cautious. It was years of loneliness and longing crashing together, her hands fisting in his shirt, his arms crushing her against his chest. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air, desperate and reverent all at once. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Kalen pressed his forehead to hers. If we continue this, he breathed, I will not be able to stop. Then do not stop. His control shattered. Seren woke to moonlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. She lay in Kalen's bed, wrapped in sheets that carried his scent, pine and wood smoke and the warmth of his skin, her body aching in ways that made her blush. Beside her, the king slept deeply, one arm still draped across her waist as though afraid she might vanish. She studied his face in the silver light. The hard lines had softened in sleep, making him look younger, more vulnerable than his 31 years. This was not the distant king who watched from towers and spoke in commands. This was just a man who had been alone for too long, a man who had chosen her. The thought sent warmth flooding through her chest, and then something else. A strange heat, different from desire, rising from somewhere deep inside. Her skin prickled, her bones hummed with the frequency she had never felt. What is happening to me? Seren slipped from the bed, wrapping a sheet around herself, and moved to the window. The moon hung full and heavy in the sky, closer than she had ever seen it, so bright it hurt to look at directly. And when she looked at it, something inside her answered. A pulse. A recognition. A call she had been deaf to her entire life suddenly ringing clear as a bell. Pain lanced through her spine. Serene gasped, doubling over, her hands bracing against the windowsill. Fire raced through her veins, not burning but transforming, reshaping, awakening. Seren. Kalen was beside her in an instant, his hands gripping her shoulders, his eyes wide with alarm. But when he saw her face, his expression shifted to something else entirely. Wonder. Your eyes, he breathed. They are glowing. Another wave of pain. Seren cried out, dropping to her knees. Her bones were shifting, cracking, reforming. Her skin rippled like water disturbed by a stone. And inside her mind, a voice she had never heard before finally spoke. I am here. I have always been here. I was simply waiting for you to be ready. Let it happen. Kalen knelt beside her, his voice steady despite the chaos. Do not fight it. Let your wolf through. Seren surrendered. The transformation took her completely. One moment she was a woman, terrified and trembling. The next, she was something else. Something powerful. Something ancient. She opened her eyes. The world had changed. Colors were sharper. Sounds clearer. Scents layered with information she could not have imagined. She looked down and saw paws where hands should be, fur black as midnight, claws glinting in the moonlight. I shifted. After 23 years, I finally shifted. She lifted her head and caught her reflection in the window. Her wolf form was massive, larger than any female wolf she had ever seen, nearly matching the great alphas in size, and her eyes. Her eyes burned gold, bright as captured sunlight. Kaelin shifted beside her. Where the man had knelt, now stood a wolf of pure silver, his eyes the same gray they had always been but deeper somehow, filled with an intelligence that was both human and not. He approached her slowly, reverently, and touched his muzzle to hers. Mate. The word echoed between them, not spoken but felt, a truth that resonated through every fiber of her being. The bond. When we touched at the ceremony, it woke something. And tonight it completed. Seren felt it now, the connection between them, a golden thread linking her soul to his. She could feel his emotions as clearly as her own, wonder, joy, and a fierce, protective love that stole her breath. She shifted back without meaning to, the transformation smoother this time, and found herself human again, kneeling on the cold floor. Kaelin shifted with her, immediately wrapping his arms around her trembling body. "You are a true wolf," he murmured against her hair. "You always were. It was simply sleeping, waiting for the bond to wake it. I do not understand." Tears streamed down her face. Why now? Why after all these years? Kaelin pulled back to look at her, and his gray eyes shone with something like reverence. Some wolves need their mate to awaken fully. His thumb brushed the tears from her cheek. "Your wolf was not absent, Seren. She was waiting. Waiting for me. Waiting for this." Seren laughed, a broken sound halfway between joy and disbelief. All those years they called me hollow, and I was just waiting for your other half. Kaelin kissed her forehead. "And now, you never have to wait again." The council chamber fell silent when Seren entered at Kaelin's side. She wore black and silver now, the king's colors, her dark hair swept back to reveal the mark that had appeared on her neck overnight. A crescent moon, the symbol of a completed mate bond, visible for all to see. Elder Mordecai rose from his seat, his face already twisting with prepared objections. "Your Majesty, the council has concerns regarding..." "The council's concerns are noted and dismissed." Kaelin guided Seren to the chair beside his throne, a seat that had sat empty for a decade. "My mate has something to show you." Seren stood before them, the same men who had spent years dismissing her, the same nobles who had wagered on her failure, and the same elders who had declared her unworthy of their king. She let the shift take her. It was easier now, almost effortless. One breath she was human, the next she stood before them in her wolf form, midnight black and massive, her golden eyes sweeping across their stunned faces. The silence was absolute. Then old Varen, the keeper of bloodline records, stumbled forward, his ancient face drained of color. He fell to his knees, not in a bow, but in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "The gold eyes, the size, the mark." His voice cracked. "She carries the blood of the first pack." Chaos erupted. Seren shifted back, and Kaelin's hand found hers immediately, anchoring her as the room dissolved into frantic whispers. The first pack was legend, the original wolves from whom all bloodlines descended. Their line had supposedly died out centuries ago, but their blood had survived. Dormant, waiting in a girl everyone had called cursed. One by one, the council members rose, and one by one, they bowed. Elder Mordecai was last, his face a mask of barely contained fury, but even he could not deny what stood before him. He bent his head in submission. Seren looked out at the bowing nobles, at the people who had spent her entire life making her feel worthless. She waited for triumph, for vindication, for the satisfaction of proving them all wrong. Instead, she felt only peace. "I did not ask for your respect," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber. I earned it. Every fall in the training yard, every insult I swallowed, every night I refused to let this castle break me. I earned it long before my wolf woke. You simply were not paying attention. She turned to Kaelin, and the look on his face made her heart stutter. Pride. Love. The absolute certainty she had craved her entire life. I see you, he murmured, echoing words she had once believed from another man. But from Kaelin, they were not empty promises. They were truth. I have always seen you. Seren smiled, the first real smile she had worn in longer than she could remember. Behind them, through the chamber windows, the morning sun broke over the mountains of Valdros, painting the world in gold. And somewhere in the castle, she knew, Theron watched from his window, understanding finally what he had thrown away. But Seren did not spare him a single thought. She had spent 12 years waiting for someone to choose her. Now she had chosen herself. And she had found someone who had been choosing her all along.